Hi everybody, Steve Atkinson here. Welcome back to the studio. Hey, the lights are on, coffee's hot, and you know what that means. Yep, it's time for another video. My goal for this channel is to show you as many tools and techniques as I can to give you the confidence to know that whatever you want to do to achieve, you have some experience and knowledge on how to do that. Today's video is all about showing you two very different techniques using the same subject so that you can go out and sketch whatever you want, and that includes complex architecture, and to be able to do it quickly without laboring over every little detail. Unless you're into that sort of thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you're anything like me, who has the attention span of a puppy,
Squirrel!
This is how I do it. This is the first sketch we're going to be doing today of the Notre Dame Cathedral. And it's an 11 by 14, so it's not real small, and I think it took me about a half an hour to do. So you can do this relatively quickly. You can really fly through this. So basically you're going to want to start out. All right, as I was watching that, I realized that there's absolutely no way anyone can follow what I was doing when it's going so fast and I was drawing so light. So let's do this a little bit differently. I'm going to slow this whole process down, and I'm going to show you exactly what I did. It's exactly what I would do if I were on location. But here's my printout of Notre Dame. Here's where I'm going to be doing my simplification, at least the beginning of the drawing. I won't do the whole thing, but I just want to show you how I'm going to do this. Now you notice that the size of this is not the same size, so I'm not going to be doing 1-to-1. I'm going to be doing a size transfer just by taking measurements, okay? So this is exactly how I would start. What we need to do is we need to find out where the edge of what we're going to be drawing is. Where's the edge of this building? Where do I put this and where do I put that? So as I'm going to do this, let's just say that building ends there, and let's say this building ends over here. So this is what we're going to be working within. The next thing that I will do is I want to see it looks like the halfway point of this building is right along this, so which is really handy. So what I'll do is we'll put just a little bit of a holding line there, okay? So you can see that. Let me make that a little bit darker. We have a little bit of looks like a wall here, so let me go ahead and put that in. Now that wall, if I'm going to do this on location, I will take my pencil and then I'll bring it over to where my paper is, and I will keep that angle going. So let's just say roughly it's here, and then it comes down a little bit. So, okay, so there's where the wall would be. I think the next thing to do is let's work on this side here, because this will kind of take care of itself. If I look at this, there's a third, and there's a third. So if I break this down into thirds really quickly, it doesn't have to be exact, but you want it to be relatively close. All right. So basically there's our third, and a third, okay? Then we need to get a unit of measurement for this here, this spire. So I will take to the bottom, or to the top of this wall, and to the top of that peak there, and let's see where that takes us. Okay, so it's roughly a square. So the height of this is going to be the same as to the edge of this building. See how easy that is? So we know that that is kind of what we're looking for, or from the top of the wall there. This is going to be where the top of our spire is. somewhere in the middle there. All right, now as I'm looking at this, I'm just going to eyeball this. The top of this is just a bit higher than the top of this. So let's find out where the top of that is, and let's just come up a little bit. So that should be the top of that. All right, so that's there. And then I will take and find out what the perspective line is on that. And what I would do is I would do this exactly the same thing. If I'm sitting there, I'll bring my pencil up and I'll take that angle, and then I'll make sure that I keep that angle and transfer it down to my paper. Now, the paper needs to be horizontal, just like the rest of this is horizontal. So, it's not going to work if I've got my paper like that. You need to make sure that it's all squared up. Okay? And so what I'd do is I would take this angle and I would transfer it here. And we're just doing that very quickly. And I see that this does not come the full third over, and which is where this would be. Okay? So this is probably going to be somewhere in here. And I will take the angle of this. Right? Split that, and you're just trying to get a general idea as to how these would go. Obviously, you follow your perspective line there. All right, so now once we do that, let's find out how high this would be. Basically, it's just a little bit longer than where that would be. So if it's there, and then you take the angle, transfer it. Well, before I do that, let me go ahead and put this roughly in here. Okay. So that's about where the roof line would start. So once we've got that, we'll go ahead and take that angle, and let me make sure I got that squared up. We're going to take that angle and we're going to follow it through. Right? So there you've got the angle. Going to take the angle of the roof, take the angle of the roof here, and we're going to transfer it there. All right, so we just keep doing this until we get everything kind of in the place where it needs to be. Now, as I'm looking at this spire, it's just a little bit to the right of the side of this building. So you don't need to measure anything. You just come over here and you try and bring it down as straight as you can. Squiggle it. Right? And then really what I'm doing is I'm kind of eyeballing where the top of this, where the roof ends there. And again, you take that angle. And it's pretty much almost exactly the same angle. There's a little bit of perspective at play there, but not a whole lot. All right, so we've got the top of that roof line. The spires come up here. You notice these little spires here go up a little higher than the roof line does. So we'll guesstimate they're about there. So all we're doing, and I'm looking at the way this breaks up, it's just a little lower than the roof line. So as long as that roof line is right, that's right about where that would be. You've got your stained glass window in there. This here, let's just kind of guesstimate where the trees are here. You don't want them to come up too high, but they don't come up quite as high as the roof line. So we'll keep that there. All right. Comes down. And then we've got a little bit of perspective going on here. Same there. Now this comes up at a little bit of an angle here. So all we're doing is once we get these large shapes figured out, then everything else falls in place. Okay, so let's see what we have next here. If I was going to do this next, I would probably say, let's put this sucker in over here. Now, this peak does not come up quite as far as that, and the width on this is just a little less than that. So bring this over here, draw that in lightly, but bring that down. I'm doing this much darker than I would be doing it as you were seeing before. But so here's the top of this line, this roof line here. And you notice this is just a little bit higher than that. So say we bring that up there. And all the time you're following this perspective line along here. And then if you want, you can put an X in there to find out where the center of that circle is. You don't have to. But that's kind of how you get that in there. This can come down a little farther. Here's the center. It comes there. This comes down here a bit farther. And everything is just being built off of everything else that you've set up. If you're not sure how wide something is going to be, you take a measurement on it and you compare it to something else. And as long as you're in the ballpark, you're not too far off, then I would continue on with it. Okay, so that's basically all I'm doing. And then when we get to this stuff, you're just kind of eyeballing it as far as how far down it comes. You don't have to be exactly 100% accurate on that. All right, and so that is exactly how I'm doing the drawing. It comes that way. We got a little blurb there. I'm looking at where the windows, top of the windows line up with the top of that. So it kind of would go like that. And I'm just kind of putting in circles about as wide as I think they should be. If there's the wrong number, it really doesn't matter. You're just getting the idea of this building across. So these flying buttresses start at the top of the window, and so you can always take an angle there. where does it go to? It goes out farther than the end of the building. And you have another little circle or ellipse, because that's a circle that's in perspective. And then this one is out here. And that's really all I'm doing. And as I go along, I'm just putting in a few details here and there. And as I do that, then the whole building starts to come together. If something's not looking right, stop what you're doing and recheck your measurements. You're drawing light enough that you can erase it out, whatever is there. Okay? So anyways, that's what I was doing, and that's what I am doing. I do that every time if I go out and I'm trying to get something accurate. Take measurements. You break down the shape, the height and the width of it, and you take it a little piece at a time. You know, you convert that into some rectangles, and you've got your ellipses there and your cones. You break things down into your general shapes, and you're going to be just fine. All right? On with the tutorial, on with the demo. I hope that helps. Okay, so now we're back into the actual sketch. And, you know, before I kind of talk to you about what I'm doing here, I just have to say that this is one of the most enjoyable, fun ways of sketching that I've ever done. And so, you know, if you go out and you're sketching and you're dreading what you're going to have to draw, then maybe you need to just kind of sit back and rethink what it is that you're doing. If you find that your idea of drawing is getting in every little detail, that's great, and if you have fun doing that. But if you find that you're not enjoying that, try and find a different way. Experiment a little bit. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work? Try something else. And that's one of the things that I love about this, is that you can be loose and free. It's almost, what I'm doing here is almost like a contour drawing. And, you know, a contour drawing is a drawing that you do where you don't pick up your pencil or your pen. It's one continuous line. It's not quite that, but it could be. You know, I could decide to do this without picking up my pencil. And one of the things I will say is that when you're doing this technique, sometimes the less detail you put in, the better. Because you're not just doing this in black and white, you're doing this in color. So that color is going to do a lot of the hard work for you. As long as you've got some landmarks in there, you don't have to draw everything in. And that's one of the most fun things about this, is allow yourself to kind of not put everything in. Leave some of the parts of it unfinished if you want. Now, I put all of this in, but sometimes I'll just let the edge of the building, like I've got over there, just let that fall away, because maybe that's not where I want you to look. Does that make sense? Now, looking at the drawing that I'm doing here, look at how loose everything is, how some of the lines run in beyond where maybe they should stop. And that's part of the charm of this technique, is that you allow things to run over top of each other. You know, I don't know, maybe you call it sloppy. Maybe it is. But I like to think of it as just kind of loose and gestural. And when you get into doing the color, which I will here in just a moment, that's even more fun. So, you know, you get the drawing in, and then it's almost like you get to rub your hands together and say, oh yeah, here we go. So now I'm going to start with just some simple washes, and I'm not going to worry about if it goes over the edges. That's part of the charm of this. So, you know, just start laying things in. Don't put in just, well, here, I should say, I don't like to put in just one tone or one color. So I'll put in, let's say, some cerulean blue in the sky, and then I'll add some purple or some magenta to that, and I'll let those kind of meld together. And I like to do a lot of spattering with this technique. So even before the sky is dry, I can go ahead and start putting in some of the trees here. Now, one of the things about this technique is the colors look better when they're stronger than what's really there. I wouldn't call it cartoony exactly, but it's definitely expressionist, and it's definitely a colorist technique rather than a tonalist. So don't be afraid to get in there and put colors and mix your oranges and your greens and allow them to kind of mix on your paper. And the more you can do that, the better you're going to like what you've got going there. And don't be a slave to exactly the colors that you see. Almost at this point, I don't hardly even look at the reference. I'll look at it to see where the shadows are, and I'll look to see where the values are, but I'm not really using it for the colors. The colors are a totally subjective thing. You can decide to make them whatever you want to. And really, that's what makes this technique so much fun. Now I'm starting in on the shadow side of the building. And you'll notice that I do start with one color, but if I find that it's not dark enough, or sometimes I just want to add in a secondary color like I was talking about up in the sky. You start with one color and you add in another color that's roughly of the same value, light and dark, but it can be a completely different color. And sometimes that's very exciting to see what they do when they dry on the paper. After you do this technique a number of times, you'll start to know which colors you like to put down on the paper that will interact with each other and complement each other. You know, a lot of times the orange and the purples I like to put together. Now I know complementary color would say yellow, but I like the orange and the purple together. It's a nice combination. So once I get the shadows in, I'm starting to throw in So once I get the shadows in, I'm starting to throw in just the tone of the church. And I do try and leave some areas of the paper uncolored. I want it to have this unfinished look about it. That's part of the charm of it to me, is when you just selectively put in where you're going to add that color and leave the rest of it the white of the paper. So here we go. There's the end of this particular technique. There's the sketch. And now it's time for sketch number 2. One of my favorite ways to sketch is using a fountain pen. If you've watched my channel at all, you've heard me talk about it. On this particular one, I've decided I'm going to use a purple ink just because I love this ink. And hey, it's my sketchbook. Here's what I used, this Strathmore hardcover book. And I'm not going to make you watch me do that little sketch out again. I did it exactly the same way. But I am using a Noodler's Ahab pen, a flex pen, flex nib. And, you can get a thick and a thin line. Although I think on this one, I just generally use it with one line weight to it. And this particular sketch is going to take me a little bit longer just because there's more detail in it. There's more cross-hatching. It's just not quite as fast of a technique as the watercolor and the pencil one is. I love doing this when I get out on location. There's just something about using a fountain pen. But one of the things I need to caution you, if you've never used one, and I'm going to be putting up a tutorial on how to get started using fountain pens and inks and, all that good stuff. But you need to make sure that the ink that you're using is fast dry, particularly for me, because I'm left-handed. And us lefties have a tendency of dragging our hands through everything we've just written or drawn. So it's double important that we have a fast-drying ink. This particular Noodler's ink, this I think it's North African violet, is a very fast drying ink, particularly on the sketch paper, which is pretty absorbent. And so you don't have to worry so much unless you just that second put it down. It's going to dry pretty quickly on you, which is great. That's exactly what you want. But you see, as I'm doing this sketch, I'm kind of doing the outline of everything. I couldn't help on that spire in the middle. I just love that shape. So, of course, I had to do that right away. I do a little more detail on this particular sketch. But the great thing about this kind of technique is you can give the impression that there's a lot of detail when there isn't. Even more so, I think, than the last one, which is kind of a sloppier, more expressive technique. This one here ends up looking more like a little bit of an architectural rendering. But it really doesn't have all that much detail. You try and get everything in the right place. And the really nice thing about sketching like this is that you don't have to put in all the detail all the way across. As I get to the back of the building, if I wanted to, I could just let that be an outline, fall away. And I see a lot of artists do that, where they'll leave certain parts of their drawing unfinished, and it looks wonderful. It looks like, and they probably did. They planned ahead and said, okay, this area I'm just going to leave alone. This is going to be my focal point, so I'm going to put in a lot more detail that way. And if you can train yourself to do that, that's a really nice thing, and it really makes your sketching go a whole lot faster. Now, as you're drawing this, or as I'm drawing this, I need to remind myself to continue to check my angles. And as long as you do that, you're going to get something that looks relatively close to what's there. Angle checking is a big part of my drawing, and I think it is for most realism artists. As long as you do that while you're drawing, you're going to be able to draw just about anything, to make sure that it's going to sit where it's supposed to sit and intersect where it's supposed to intersect. So as I'm going along on here, I'm just simply adding in details as I go, and I'll draw through things quite a bit. You see that I did that with those flying buttresses there again. I put the circles in, or the ellipses in, of the stained glass windows, and then I went in and added the buttresses over the top of it. Now you can do it the other way if you want to. You can put the buttresses in first and then be a lot more careful with your marks, and so you don't have that overlapping shape. But I find that overlapping things, then it makes things look more like they're sketches, like they're not supposed to be considered final architectural renderings. This is just for fun. This is to train your eye, and you get out into the fresh air. I love urban sketching. Of course, I live in an area where there's more sketching than urban, and that's okay. But when I get the chance, I'll go down to the courthouse and I'll sketch that. And there's an awful lot of angles there, and it just keeps your eye sharp. It's so much fun. If you've never done it before, if you live in a city, check online to see if there's an urban sketching chapter that's close to you. And if there is, check it out. If you've already done urban sketching, or if you do it, leave a comment down in the comment section. Let me know what you like, and let me know where you like to sketch. I'm always looking for good places to go. And these urban sketching symposiums that happen all over the world are really kind of calling to me. There was one the year before in Chicago. Last year's was in Porto, Portugal. And this coming year, I believe, is going to be in Amsterdam. It just looks like it's a lot of fun, and you can go there and sketch with like-minded people. But there's a real movement going on out there. And the thing about urban sketching, when you get together, is that at the end of the sketching session, everybody puts their drawings out, so everyone else gets to see them. So if you're a little bit shy about that, don't be. Everybody's just out there to have fun and do the best they can do, and you get better as you go along. So, embrace that community, that sense of artistic spirit if you can find one in your area. And I'm probably one of the biggest introverts you're ever going to meet in your life. And if I can get myself out there doing it, I'm sure that you can too. Once you get over that initial being shy a little bit, you can just sit down and tune everything else out. One of the things you can do is put on headphones so people know that that you're not available to talk. But you're going to meet the nicest people when you're out there. So many people are interested in what you're doing. You will be amazed. One of the things that you can do to help get yourself out there is get a sketch buddy. Most of us know someone else who loves doing what we do. And so just decide you're going to go out on a certain day, and one of you will probably hold the other one accountable for going out, even though you may not feel like it. So it's always easier when you go out with a couple of people or another person, and you allow yourself to, to have someone else to kind of lean on if you're kind of shy. There's no reason at all to be. Although, if you set up outside of someone's business or cafe, make sure that you ask first before you just start sketching, because you don't want to drive away business from their customers. And to try and set up so that you're a little more inconspicuous, just setting your sketchbook on your knee or on your lap and kind of glancing up will do a lot towards masking what it is that you're doing if you'd rather not be calling attention to yourself. So coming down the home stretch here, I decided at the last moment that I was going to go in and try and just use plain ink to do a little bit of shading. Normally I wouldn't do this, but I thought, well, let me try and experiment and see how it goes. I probably should have stopped before I went ahead and did this. It's okay, except I think I overworked the stained glass a little bit. And, that's how you learn. You make mistakes, and then you try not to do the same thing the next time. I think this is about it. Putting a few more people in, it always helps with your sketch. And there we are. So anyways, we've come to the end of another sketching session. It's time to turn the lights off. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button if you like this kind of thing. Also, hitting the like button really helps the channel to grow, and it's greatly appreciated by me. Hit that little notification bell so that you know when I upload new material. Hey, anyways, time to go. Time to turn off the lights. And like I always say, I'll see you down the road.